Most people think property line disputes are about greed. They picture two stubborn neighbors fighting over a few inches of dirt like something out of a bad reality show. I used to think that too, right up until the day a $500,000 house started rising out of the ground, 6 inches onto my land. And the crazy part is, I gave them every chance in the world to fix it before I decided to make it very, very expensive for them not to. My name's Wade Harper, and up until 2 years ago, my life was about as exciting as a fence post. I lived outside a little town called Bell Ridge, Tennessee, way out where the roads stopped getting painted and folks still wave at each other from pickup trucks. My dad bought our land back in the early 80s when nobody wanted property out there because there wasn't much to look at except trees, creek water, and mosquitoes the size of sparrows. But my old man loved it. He used to tell me, land's the only thing they ain't making more of. Son, when he passed, that narrow strip of woods became mine, 5 acres long and skinny, stretching from the county road all the way back to Miller Creek. Nothing fancy, no mansion, no cattle ranch, just quiet, honest quiet. The kind where you hear frogs at night and wind moving through cedar trees instead of traffic and sirens. And for years, nobody bothered me. Then the Caldwells showed up. Ethan and Sierra Caldwell rolled into Bell Ridge from Portland, driving a shiny black Rivian towing one of those silver Airstream trailers that cost more than my first 3 trucks combined. Nice enough people at first glance, smiling all the time, wearing those expensive, outdoorsy clothes that somehow never actually get dirty. They bought the property next to mine and immediately started talking about building a sustainable forever homestead. That phrase alone should have warned me. Within a month they had architects, contractors, excavators, survey crews, concrete trucks, the whole circus. Every few days Sierra posted videos online talking about escaping toxic city energy while standing in front of bulldozers tearing half the hillside apart. My niece showed me one of her videos and said, "Uncle Wade, these people are kind of famous online. Figures." The thing is, I didn't hate them. Honestly, I try not to judge them. Folks move out to the country all the time chasing some version of peace they saw online. Most either settle in or leave after the first hard winter. I figured they'd learn like everybody else. Then one afternoon, I noticed something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I was walking my property line checking storm damage after heavy rain, and I saw fresh concrete forms sitting awful close to the old iron survey stake near the eastern edge. Too close. Now, my father was obsessive about property boundaries. The man trusted survey markers more than doctors. When I was 12, he made me walk every inch of that line with him, carrying orange tape and a hammer while he explained easements like he was teaching nuclear physics. So when I saw that concrete pad practically kissing the marker, I already knew something was wrong before I even measured it. I crouched down beside the stake, brushed mud off the top with my thumb, and my stomach dropped. The foundation crossed onto my property, not by feet, not even by a foot. 6 inches. That was it. 6 stupid inches. And believe me, part of me almost laughed, because who goes to war over 6 inches of dirt in the middle of nowhere? But another part of me knew exactly what 6 inches meant. It meant they either never got a proper survey, or worse, they saw the line and decided it didn't matter. So I walked over to the construction site, and that's where I met Ethan Caldwell for real the first time. He was standing near the excavator holding an iced coffee and wearing boots so clean they looked rented for the occasion. I told him calmly, "Hey man, your foundation crossed the property line." He barely even looked concerned. Actually, he smiled. Then he pulled out his phone and opened one of those land app maps people use for hunting property. "See," he said, "according to this, we're totally inside our lot." I stared at him for a second because I honestly thought he was joking. I said, "That app's accurate within maybe 10, 15 feet on a good day. Those iron stakes are the legal markers." And I'll never forget what he said next. He laughed, took a sip of his coffee, and said, "Come on, Wade. Those things are probably from the 80s. Ground shifts, ground shifts." I looked at that foundation again, then back at him, and right there, standing in Tennessee mud while this guy from Portland explained land to me using an iPhone app, I had the strangest feeling this was about to become a whole lot bigger than 6 inches. For the next few days, I tried convincing myself it wasn't worth the headache. Seriously, I'd sit on my back porch at night listening to crickets and tell myself, "Wade, let it go. 6 inches ain't worth turning your life upside down over." But every time I thought about it, I kept hearing my father's voice in the back of my head. If somebody takes 6 inches today, they'll take 6 feet tomorrow. And the thing nobody tells you about rural land disputes is they're never really about the dirt. They're about respect, about whether somebody thinks the rules apply to them. A week later, I walked back over there carrying copies of both surveys in a manila folder. I even stopped by the diner beforehand and rehearsed how I was going to handle it. Calm, respectful, neighborly. I wasn't looking for a fight. Hell, I didn't want one. Construction was moving fast by then. Framing had started. Trucks coming in and out non-stop. Country music blasting from portable speakers. The house itself was massive. Black metal roof, giant windows, one of those modern farmhouse places people build after scrolling Pinterest too long. Ethan was talking with a contractor when I arrived. Sierra stood nearby filming some kind of update video for social media. I waited politely until they finished. Then I handed Ethan the survey copies and said, "Look, man, I'm asking one more time before this turns into something expensive. Your foundation is over the line." He barely glanced at the paperwork. "I mean," he sighed, "we're kinda past the point of changing it now." That answer irritated me more than if he'd yelled. Not because he disagreed with me, because he didn't care. I said, "That's not really my problem." Sierra lowered her phone a little and gave me this look like I was ruining a birthday party. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck and said, "Okay, what if we just adjust the property line? We'll pay for the paperwork. I'll throw in $1,000 for the inconvenience." $1,000. The man said it like he was tipping valet parking. I actually laughed a little because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You think I'm selling part of my land because you poured concrete in the wrong spot? It's 6 inches, Wade. It's my 6 inches." That wiped the smile off his face. The contractor suddenly found something real interesting to look at across the property. Sierra crossed her arms and said, "You seriously want us to tear down part of our house over this?" I looked directly at her and said, "No, I want you to fix the mistake before it becomes a bigger one." Ethan's whole tone changed after that. He stopped pretending to be friendly. "Look," he said quietly, "we've already invested hundreds of thousands into this build. Nobody's demolishing anything over a technicality." Technicality. That word stuck with me all the way home. Because to people like Ethan, ownership becomes a technicality. The second money enters the conversation. They genuinely believe the size of their investment gave them leverage over reality itself. That night, I called my lawyer, an old bulldog named Frank Delaney who'd handled timber rights and land disputes for 30 years. Frank talked slow, smoked too much, and had the personality of an unpaid parking ticket. After listening to everything, he asked one question. "You warned them clearly?" "Twice." "Good," he said. "Judges hate arrogance." The formal cease and desist letter went out 3 days later, demanding they halt construction immediately and remedy the encroachment before legal action escalated. They ignored it. Not only ignored it, they accelerated construction. It almost became personal after that. Every morning, I'd hear nail guns echoing to the trees before sunrise, delivery trucks rattling down the road, workers laughing, progress happening inch by inch on top of land they knew wasn't theirs. And Sierra kept posting online like none of it existed. "My little forest sanctuary is finally coming together," she said in one video, while standing 10 feet from disputed property markers. The comments underneath drove me insane. "This is goals. You escaped the Matrix. So inspiring." Meanwhile, I was spending evenings digging through county records with Frank. That's when things got interesting. See, Ethan and Sierra had actually received a corrected survey from the county surveyor before the foundation was finalized. Frank uncovered the email during discovery months later. The contractor flagged the discrepancy too, meaning they knew, not maybe knew, and kept building anyway. Frank leaned back in his office chair one afternoon holding the documents and gave this slow little grin. "Oh, these idiots are cooked." That was the first time I realized I might actually win. The lawsuit officially hit county court in early spring. By then, the Caldwells had fully moved into the house. Giant glass walls glowing at night through the trees like some luxury retreat dropped into Appalachia by aliens. And from the outside, they looked happy. They hosted outdoor dinner parties, put up string lights, bought chickens they clearly didn't know how to handle. Sierra posted videos baking sourdough bread while soft indie music played in the background. But every few weeks they had to show up in court. And every single hearing chipped away a little more of that polished confidence. At the first hearing, Ethan still acted cocky. Expensive watch, tailored jacket, that same reasonable businessman voice he always used. Their attorney argued the encroachment was minimal and caused no practical harm. Frank stood up afterward and said something I'll never forget. "Your Honor, If the defendant parked 6 inches into a bank vault, we'd still call it theft. Even the clerk smirked. The judge, an older woman named Judith Mercer, didn't say much during those early hearings, but she watched everything, especially Ethan, especially the way he kept interrupting people. By summer, the financial pressure started showing. Construction loans had ballooned because of legal delays. Interest rates climbed. Their social media slowed down. Contractors filed liens over unpaid balances. One afternoon, I drove past and saw Ethan sitting alone on the unfinished deck, staring into the woods with both hands over his face. For a second, I actually felt bad for him, and that surprised me, because despite everything, part of me understood what he'd been trying to build. Not just a house, a new identity, a cleaner life. Some escape from whatever made people leave cities and run toward quiet places like Belridge. But somewhere along the way, he confused wanting something with being entitled to it. And that's a dangerous thing. The turning point came during mediation. Their lawyer offered me $15,000 for a permanent easement. Frank didn't even let me answer before saying, "Not enough." Ethan slammed his hand on the table. "This is extortion over 6 damn inches." And that room went silent. Frank calmly slid the survey photos across the table and said, "No, Ethan. Extortion is building on land you knew wasn't yours and hoping money fixes it afterward." Sierra started crying quietly after that. Not dramatic movie crying, exhausted crying. The kind where somebody finally realizes the life they imagined isn't coming back. And honestly, that was the moment the whole thing stopped feeling satisfying. Because suddenly they weren't smug influencers anymore. They were just two people watching their dream rot from the inside out. But by then, it was already too late. The final hearing happened on a gray October morning that smelled like rain and dead leaves. Belridge County Courthouse isn't some grand marble building you see in movies either. It's small, old, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, coffee stains on half the benches. Everybody looking mildly irritated to be there. But that morning, the place was packed. Small towns love drama, especially expensive drama. By then, word had spread all over the county about the California House lawsuit. Even though Ethan kept correcting people that they were from Oregon, didn't matter. Around here, anything west of Nashville might as well be California. I got there early with Frank. He handed me a gas station coffee and said, "Today's either going to hurt real bad for them, or catastrophically bad." That was Frank's version of optimism. Ethan and Sierra walked in a few minutes later, and honestly, they looked 10 years older than when I first met them. The confidence was gone. The social media glow was gone. Even the expensive clothes couldn't hide the exhaustion anymore. And for the first time since this whole thing started, Ethan wouldn't look me in the eye. Court lasted almost 4 hours. Surveyors testified. Contractors testified. County officials testified. At one point, the original site engineer admitted under oath that concerns about the boundary had been raised before concrete was poured. That one sentence basically detonated their case. I remember Sierra closing her eyes when he said it, like she already knew what was coming. Then, Judge Mercer started reading her ruling, and the room got dead quiet. She said the encroachment itself may have been physically small, but the defendant's conduct was not. She called it willful negligence, after repeated warnings and opportunities to correct the issue. Then she looked directly at Ethan and said something I honestly think about to this day. Property rights only exist if they apply equally to everyone, including people wealthy enough to ignore them. You could feel the air leave the room. The court-appointed appraiser had already submitted valuation reports beforehand, and because the strip of land was legally tied to structural compliance for the home, the numbers got ugly fast. Judge Mercer gave them 2 options. Option 1. Purchase a permanent easement and settlement package totaling $78,000, plus reimbursement for all my legal fees, survey costs, and court expenses. Option 2. Pay an annual compulsory easement fee indefinitely, subject to future increases. Frank leaned over and whispered, "That second option will bury them alive." Ethan's attorney immediately objected, arguing the amount was punitive and excessive. The judge didn't even blink. "Mr. Caldwell was warned repeatedly," she said. "This court is not responsible for the financial consequences of his arrogance." Man, you ever witness a moment where somebody realizes, in real time, that one bad decision changed the trajectory of their entire life? That was Ethan's face. Not anger, not outrage, just pure collapse. Sierra started crying again quietly while their attorney kept talking numbers, but I don't think either of them were really listening anymore, because the truth had finally landed all at once. This beautiful dream house they built to symbolize freedom had become a prison made out of debt, court orders, and humiliation. And the craziest part? It all came down to 6 inches they could have fixed in the beginning. After court, Ethan stopped me outside near the courthouse steps while rain started drizzling across the parking lot. For a second, I thought he was going to yell at me. Instead, he just looked tired. He said, "Was it really worth all this?" I stood there looking at him, this man who had spent nearly 2 years treating boundaries like inconveniences, and I answered honestly, "It would have cost you almost nothing to respect the line the first time." He didn't say anything after that, just nodded once and walked away. I never saw Sierra again after the ruling. Rumor around town was she moved back to Portland for a while because the stress wrecked their marriage. Ethan stayed in Beltridge another year trying to recover financially, but eventually they sold the house at a loss. Last I heard, some retired couple from Kentucky bought it cheap because nobody local wanted the stigma attached to the property. As for me, life mostly went back to normal. The woods stayed quiet, the creek kept flowing, and every now and then, I still walked that property line the way my father taught me, checking the old iron stakes buried in the dirt. Only now, whenever I pass that section near the Caldwell's old house, I stop for a second and look at those 6 inches of ground that caused all that destruction. And honestly, sometimes I wonder if I should have just taken the money in the beginning, not because I think I was wrong. I don't. But because winning something and feeling good about it aren't always the same thing. That's the part people don't talk about enough. Everybody online loves revenge stories when they're clean and satisfying, but real life leaves dents on everybody involved. Ethan lost his money, Sierra lost her dream, and somewhere in the middle of all that, I lost a little faith in the idea that neighbors naturally look out for each other. Still, if I had backed down, what would that have said about ownership, about fairness, about every regular person who gets pushed around by somebody wealthier betting they won't fight back? I don't know. Maybe that's why this story still sticks with me. So let me ask you this. If somebody built 6 inches onto your land after multiple warnings, would you have fought it all the way to court too? Or would you have taken the money and moved on? Because I've heard both answers from people around here, and honestly, the comment section on this one oughta get interesting. If you enjoyed the story, hit subscribe and stick around, because trust me, out here in small town America, property lines aren't the only things people are willing to go to war over.